any before making any decisions in your business, it's always, we suggest to seek medical advice. Today's content does not constitute financial advice. Always get professional advice from your accountant or your lawyer before you make the sort of decisions in your business. Today is information and education and not financial advice. So there we go. I've said that out loud. Alice, we could probably take that down now, because I'm not actually going to use, so we've got, can have everybody there on the screen. So thank you. If you're comfortable putting your screens up, please do, and that way we can have a bit more interaction. So the topics we're going to talk about, we'll try and make finance a bit interesting. I'm going to talk a tiny bit about completing BAS, and I know some people don't do that, and there's about 2 lines on that, about accounts and bookkeeping, reviewing costing, and I'm going to work through a case study, because I think that's sometimes a really useful way of people understanding what, you know, how we can approach things. And then some tips about the pandemic that aren't as much about finance, but just about how 2021, everybody thought 2020 was the year, and 2021 has just delivered even more adventure for us. So personally, I believe that every business owner deserves to be financially savvy when it comes to money and understanding money and what goes on with money in the money side of business. I was fortunate. I was taught about money at a young age, and every day when I work with clients, somebody says, I wish somebody had taught me about this when I was a kid. And, you know, I think the best thing we can do is teach kids about money so that, you know, that they are different, have a different approach. So when you understand how money works in your business, it changes things. And one of the things that I would really like to put up front is that I think some of the professionals make it very complex, and it doesn't need to be complex. It's pretty simple. And I honestly, if you can do what you do with people's bodies, if you understand what you do in your business and you do that really well, there's nothing financial that you can't understand. It's pretty basic, but there's all this complexity gets built in by the people who sell their services. So most people get into business because, you know, I've worked with allied health and fitness and other wellbeing businesses. You want to change people's lives, you want to give of yourself, you believe you make a difference, and you want to make an impact. But many business owners are intimidated by their numbers. They don't know what they mean, they don't know what the reports are saying, they don't know what they're supposed to be looking for. So my aim is to change this. So I'm going to go through some ways of how we tackle this and how we think about to help shift your perspective perhaps. Now, the truth is you're here. So you're probably already on this side of the line. You're already, you know, working with your numbers. But there's always some gem that you can take away from today. So once, you know, you've got a successful business, you're passionate about that, but you often, business owners feel frustrated and stressed when it comes to the financial side. So one of the things that I like to think about is how we make decisions in business. When we come to making a decision, how do we actually make that decision? And what I've noticed that one of 3 things happen when it comes to making a decision in business. In the first instance, business owners, and I've done it myself, we make a decision and then we wonder if it's the right one. We think about it later in the day and we think, maybe I should do it a different way. And then we go home and talk to someone, or we go for a run with someone and we have a discussion. We say, oh, maybe I should try it this way. And what do you think? And then we wake up in the middle of the night. Is this the right decision? And it's not efficient. And we go round in circles and time evaporates. You know, resources are lost. The opportunity is lost, the to and the fro, wondering about a decision. So there's the decision is made and then there's this vacillation and action doesn't happen. The second thing that happens is that some business owners just say yes. They just say, I'm a quick decision is a good decision sort of person. So they make a decision and that's their mantra and they just get on with it. And, you know, sometimes that can end up in lost money, lost time, lost revenue, mistakes, you know, and sometimes it works out. Has anyone ever had that experience where you're that sort of person that just makes a decision and things, you know, and then you discover that you've wasted time and wasted effort? And the third thing that happens is that people don't make a decision at all. And this is one of the most common, is that there isn't a decision made because we don't know how to make a decision. Will I increase my prices? Oh, should I? Shouldn't I? What will the clients think? oh, it's too difficult to decide how much, maybe I'll do it next quarter, maybe I'll wait till the financial year end. And so we don't change the prices. I need to hire a new team member. Will I do that? Will I not do that? Which tasks? How do I do it? I don't even know where to start. And a year later, in the same boat, none of the decisions have been made. So what I love to do with working with clients is help make decisions based on financials, based on the numbers, based on the fact, based on data. So what happens then is we have a better chance of making a sound decision, making a decision that we can implement with confidence, and we make it once. And I think that's the secret to making decisions in business, is to make them with sound business information and make the decision once. And how do we do that? We get comfortable with the numbers, we use the numbers to make the decision, and we make the decision once. So I'm going to give an example, and if that's okay with everybody. And if you want to ask me questions, so does anyone have any questions at this point? Does that make sense to people? Can I see a thumbs up or a hand raise or all the different things that we have there in the technology? Thank you. Thank you. Dirk got a hands up there. Parry, is it Parry? Yeah, got a thumbs up from you there. Good, thank you. So I'm going to give you an example of a Pilates client that I worked with. And I work with wellbeing, health and fitness, allied health. I've done a lot of work with dental practices, and they're quite complex. And so the same thing as what this single practitioner works for dental practice as well. So she came to me and she said, I need to pay myself more. Well, in fact, I need to pay myself. I want to work less, and I need to charge my clients more for what I do. So the way the business was structured, and she'd been in business for about 10 years, and it was quite successful. Like it was a successful business. She was able to pay for everything in the business, and she had, but the way the accountant did it at the end of the year was he sort of did his accounting magic, and the family, that's how the money just got absorbed into it. She always had enough money, but she didn't ever pay herself. And she said after 10 years, it became really demoralizing to not have that sense that she was paying herself. Now, I know some of you filled in the survey, and thank you very much for doing that. You know, that one of the questions there is, do you pay yourself? And so whether we pay ourselves a small amount or whether we just take money out of the business, something happens when we actually pay ourselves in a business. And she said she'd reached a point where if she was going to do this, that she actually wanted to be able to pay herself. So when I say about the accountant did the magic at the end of the year, there's two types of accounting. And I know some of you have been on sessions with me before, and I've explained this, so there's the tax accountant. So there's the accountant who prepares your tax. Now, there's a whole lot of things happen with your accounts that make them appropriate to submit to your tax office. And wherever you are in the world, that's going to be a little bit different depending on what the tax rules are. And then there's the set of accounts that you want to run as a business person. And that's what I work with. That's what I'm talking about today. And so your tax accountant can do what needs to be done to make it tax effective with the tax department. The thing is, that's not particularly helpful for you as a business owner to make the decisions that we're talking about for your business. So what I call this is the accounting that's helpful to business owners. It's got all kinds of names in other corporate worlds, management accounting or cost accounting, but it really is the accounting that's helpful to business owners, because you want to be able to understand the numbers. So back to Sarah, I'll call her Sarah, her name's not Sarah. She wanted to pay herself, she wanted to increase her prices, and she wanted to work less one-on-one sessions. So what did we do? And it's a step-by-step process that I have done with pretty much any business I've been in. And, you know, I spent 20 years in the corporate world doing finance. I worked in a couple of the largest manufacturing companies in Australia. I worked for Qantas, did finance at Qantas, and then moved into working with small businesses. So, you know, everything that works in those bigger businesses, this is really what we do in a smaller business. So the first step is to figure out what is the cost of doing business. Now, what I find with that survey is when I ask the question, do you know how much it costs to run your business for 12 months or for a month? People don't know how much it costs to run your business. Now, where do we find that number? We find that in something called the profit and loss report. So the P&L is the report, and it's pretty simple. The top part is revenue, the next part is expenses, and then expenses taken away from revenue is profit. So what we want is to get a handle on what are all those expenses. So whether you're using Xero or whether you're using MYOB or an Excel spreadsheet, where do we accumulate all those costs? Now, one of the things that was in the list of talking about today is how we keep ourselves, what do we do with our financials? Keeping up to date is critical. And having a bookkeeper or outsourcing to someone who can keep these up to date, or doing it yourself, but whether you do it every week or whether you do it every day or whether you do it every month, and have a timeline that you stick to, that we actually have our accounts up to date. So at any time you can jump into that software and you can see how much your business is costing. So it's a fundamental question. How much does it cost to run my business for a year, for a month, for a week? That's a number that is emblazoned in your heart. It's the number that you want to know what it is. So the first thing we want to know is, what is that amount of money? And I'm astounded at how baffled some business owners can be by the smoke and mirrors created by accountants and bookkeepers. Don't let them do that. Get hold of that report and find out what your overall costs are for a period of time, whether it's a quarter or a year. And so that's step one. The first thing we did with Sarah was we found out what that was. And then step two was, how much did she want to pay herself? So I know what happens, there's the amount you'd like to pay yourself, and there's the amount that the business can afford to pay. Now, I have a friend who, when she started her business, she paid herself $2 a week, but she just wanted to pay herself something because it came out. And then she made it $4 a week, and then she made it $10 a week, and then she graduated, and now she gets paid like a normal person. But she just wanted that idea that she was actually having something, a line item that said my payday. And so, sort of step one is all the costs that you have in the business. Step two is add how much you want to, Sarah, how much you want to pay yourself. So I call that the total costs. And I call this the basic survival revenue target, because this is the basic survival revenue target that you want for your business. If you make this much revenue in your business, you'll cover your costs and you'll pay yourself. Step three, do we want to add additional profit? So what would we do with that profit? We'd have training, we'd have more equipment, we'd have other business improvements. We might improve our signage. We'd start to stash away a nest egg for a buffer or a rainy day. And in fact, last year I worked with a client who had what she called a baby business, because it had only been running for a year. She hadn't been paying herself. And since working together last year, she's gone into this lockdown in Sydney with 6 months rent in a buffer balance that she's been able to accumulate since we started working together last year. And she hasn't had to touch that because she has enough revenue coming in her business to be able to cover the rent and cover her costs, and she hasn't had to touch that buffer. So she was able to build herself enough profit into the business to be able to stash away for that rainy day. And there's nothing gives you that sense of being able to be in business safely than being able to know that you've got that money sitting in an account for when something happens and you haven't got the revenue. But she's paying herself, she's got her rent, her 6 months rent stashed away, and she's feeling pleased with herself, and so she should, because that's quite an achievement. So I call this the true revenue target. So this is the true revenue target that you're working for your business. So you've got your expenses, you've got your basic survival, which includes paying you, and now you've got a true revenue target. And the next step, so step 4, is how do we achieve that? What does the timetable look like? How much are we going to charge for the different sessions? What is the mix of sessions? And that's where, sometimes we get out some flip chart paper and we map it out, and we get some Excel spreadsheets, and we do, depending on the complexity of the business. You can imagine in a dental practice where you've got 3 or 4 dentists and you've got, multiple costs, and you've got a team of maybe 15 or 20 people, this becomes a much more complex calculation. So, when I go back to Sarah as a single practitioner, we mapped out what her day and what her week would look like. We looked at what clients did she have. I think she had about 86 different clients, and we looked at who came when, what did their pattern of attendance look like, and then we looked at pricing. And this is where, the belief that you have in what you're worth and the value that you provide for your clients becomes so important. And I know some of you have heard me talk about this before, but it's what I call the hairdresser model. And the idea is that at one end of the spectrum, we have, a cheap cut, we have a $50 experience and it sometimes can be a great experience. It could be, it's what it is. And then we have at the other end of the spectrum, $500, $600 for a hairdresser. So what is it? What is it that allows the same thing, pair of scissors, snip, 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 that's all it is. What is it that allows one person to charge that and another person to charge this? And so when you think about you and what is it that you do for your clients, and that's, there's a whole other discussion to be had about that, but is when you truly know what that value is that you provide for your clients, how much do you want to charge for that? And my experience with that is that when I've worked with clients and we've increased their prices, they've gone to their customers, to their clients, and they've said, it's about time you put your prices up. Or they've said to them, is that all? You should charge even more than that. Because often the clients can see that the value is there, and they start to recognize that when they look around at what else there is, they want to stay with you because they believe in what you do. But they look around and see that you're not even charging as much as some of the others around. And, the more experience you have, the more kudos you have in your industry, the more courses you do, the more tuned you get to people's bodies, particularly working with people's bodies, the more experience you have and the more valuable that is to the individual client. So with Sarah, we mapped out her week and we prepared the communication to go out to her clients. And I'll never forget the moment she said to me, is that all there is to it? And this is what I find so astounding is, yes, that is all there is to it. And, we've got people who want to charge a phenomenal amount of money to do all the accounting and bookkeeping and all of the things, it makes it look so complex, and it's not. Honestly, if you can do what you do in your work, you can understand any of the financials. So how are we tracking? How are we feeling? Do you feel like you can? Do you feel like you could run a report and pull out those numbers now? And we've got, look, the truth is you guys are here because you already understand your financials. So when you've got someone working with you, explaining it simply, it truly makes a huge difference. So a few weeks later, everything was implemented. And Sarah actually came back to me and said, you know what, I've had a conversation with my husband and my accountant. I feel like an equal. And, that is amazing. So what it's like when one of your clients say, I can feel the difference. And so, it really is amazing when somebody feels the difference about their financials. Okay, so do we have any questions at this stage? That's an example I wanted to give you. And that's really all that needs to be done in every business on a regular basis. You review the expenses. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we do some of that, how we implement that. But I just wanted to check in. I'm going to have a sip of water. And if anyone has any questions. Am I talking too fast? Is everyone keeping up? We're all good? Okay. All right. So how do we understand the numbers? Like, that's what people say to me. Two things. One, time and space in your schedule. I know you're already so busy, you're doing everything and all the different things that have to be done, but how can you find some extra space, whether it's weekly or monthly, to have a look at your numbers, closing down everything else and just taking half an hour or 40 minutes or whatever you can to spend the time actually working on this and looking at it. I know clients sometimes say to me, Ingrid, I just want to figure out how to make more money. And yes, the response to that is it makes space and you will make more money. So that's something to think about, is make some space for this. And the other thing I say to people is, and I know you guys are already here, so you probably don't need this, but be curious. Be curious instead of frustrated. Or that O word, the overwhelm. Oh, it's so overwhelming. But when you find yourself thinking you're frustrated or it's overwhelming, bring a sense of curiosity to it. What if I understood this? What if this really was easier? What if it really was, like Ingrid says, it's actually easier to understand, not just because it's her and she's done it for years, but because it actually is understandable. So two things that we need is we need time, we need space, and we need curiosity. So that's how to get stimulated and to see new ways and to be able to understand the financials. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about your financials, and the bookkeeping is like my number one tip is there to stay up to date. If you outsource to a bookkeeper, set your expectations and just say to them, look, I want to be able to look at my monthly report at the second day of the month after the end of the month. You know, on the 3rd of September, I want to be able to look at August and the year to date. On the 3rd of October, I want to be able to look at my September quarter. I want to be able to review my numbers. So, you know, that is what I think about when it comes to actually looking at your finalizing your accounts and your bookkeeping, is to stay up to date, use Xero, use MyOb, look at the reports, start with one report, get that P&L out and look at it month to month. Look at the report month to month. And what are you looking for? You're looking for consistency. That's the very first thing. Thanks, Gavin. That's consistency is the first thing. It's about the accuracy of the report. Is everything recorded? Is everything as it should be? So when you look at the report, does it look like it should be that, you know, if you pay $100 a month for advertising and there's suddenly a big jump in one of the months there, then what are you going to do? Like, what is it? Something that hasn't been recorded correctly, therefore it should be in insurance, or it should be in telecommunications, or it should be somewhere else. So you're looking for the consistency of the report. So when you know that that's right, then you start to look at, is it what you expected it to be? So that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for two things. You're looking for the accuracy of the information to make sure that the information has been recorded correctly. And then once you are confident that the information is correct, you look at, is it what you projected it to be? So if you thought you were going to spend $1,000 on marketing and advertising, and now you've spent $800, then that's probably a bonus because you haven't spent those extra $200. But where has that $200 been spent? Has it been, you know, what haven't you done? Or if you thought you were going to spend $1,000 and it's showing up as $1,500, and you know that each amount's accurate, then, you know, what did you get for that extra $500? So you're really looking at the report for consistency, for accuracy, and looking at any of the increases. Because sometimes a supplier can increase a price. Like Xero went from $50 to $55, $55 to $60. It's only $5, but over a year, that starts to add on more, and that's eating into your revenue and your profits. Okay, so that's about looking at reports. Choose a report and look at it on a regular basis. And it's the same with your Mindbody reports. When it comes to looking at the BAS, I have two things to say about BAS. And I know some of the people listening don't have BAS. Always put your money in a separate bank account for your taxes. The money's not yours. Many of the banks now offer a very low cost or no cost bank accounts that you can every week or every day, however often your money comes in, transfer that portion into the other bank account so that you've got it when you come to pay for it. And if you're making profit, it's important to have a chat to that accountant and make sure that you're putting away amounts, and keep your accounts up to date. Again, that applies to the BAS. So that's my general comments about bookkeeping and accounting, is to stay up to date and review them, set aside some time and review them regularly. Now, when it comes to KPIs, key performance indicators or numbers to track, what is everybody tracking? What? Do you want to jump in the chat and just let me know what are the sorts of things that you currently track? Because we don't want to overwhelm too many. Like, we don't want to be tracking too many, because that becomes, we want to have some couple that we can just be curious about. How does that track week to week or month to month? What have we got? Some of my favorites. Let's see what we've got here. Retention on clients, absolutely. We want to know what retention looks like, and rebooking rates. Yeah. Sales, memberships, new inquiries. Yeah. So very sales driven there. Very nice. Revenue growth is another one that is a nice one to watch. It's, you know, like month on month, is the revenue staying consistent, or is revenue growing, even a small amount of revenue growth? And that goes to yours, Carrie, you know, sales, memberships, new inquiries. So new inquiries, you'd want to see that that was leading to more growth in revenue. Corey, as you say, retention and rebooking, that helps with revenue. So you're wanting to see, you know, the revenue growth to that. And tracking revenue per client or revenue per membership. So just thinking about how you would measure that. So, you know, what does each client spend every month? And I know that's where the Mindbody reports are so fantastic, is that you can actually run and you can track those. And I know that when clients start doing that, is they're quite surprised at who actually are the ones that are spending, you know, how that tracks. And sometimes it can feel like it's these ones, but in fact it's these ones. And you're probably right to some of them. I think retention is a really important, it's a really important measurement to track, the retention, and how you do that is probably different in different industries. Like, what does that look like overall? I know with dentists, you know, one of the things they look at with retention is, because somebody doesn't have to have a tooth out all the time, but what you're looking at with retention there is the maintenance. You know, somebody coming back for their 6 monthly checkups or their annual checkups, and how does that work? And in fact, the good thing about retention and some of that basic revenue generation is that can actually cover your fixed costs. So, you know, having a good retention of a core of clients can actually be the amount of money that covers those basic costs, that mean that every month you know that is actually covered. Attendance rates. So when we talk about attendance rates, do you want to tell me a little bit more about that, Carrie?
On mute. Yeah, so what I'm talking about is people that are attending classes. So I just watching the numbers, and you can do that really well on Mindbody by seeing the attendance rates. So you can actually then track which instructors have got wait lists, which instructors don't, what times of the day, what slots work well. There's a report in Mindbody that pulls that out for you quite nicely and in a summary roll-up form. And for me, that's really helpful in managing my timetabling and forecasting where I need to tweak the timetable and change the times and the class levels as well. So in our business with a swim school, when people are progressing, a lot of people start off as beginners and then they kind of progress up. We need more classes at the advanced level. So we're always tweaking and revising our timetable month by month.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And so the thing I would also add, and Carrie, thank you, you've raised a great point, is you're already used to running a lot of these reports in Mindbody. So then when it comes to running your financial reports in Xero and MYOB, it's really just another report. Like it's another way of getting financial information for your business. So you're already getting quite a lot of the revenue reports from Mindbody. Revenue per session isn't, thank you, revenue per session is another really useful one to have. And, you know, maybe you make decisions that there are some sessions that aren't high revenue